Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a very special episode of the Clone Force 97 podcast. In this episode, we are going to be having a roundtable discussion in celebration of Star Wars Podcast Day 2025. We're thrilled to have you all here as we come together to talk about what makes Star Wars so special to us. Star Wars Podcast Day commemorates the anniversary of Jedi Talk, the very first Star Wars podcast which premiered on February 7th, 1999. That podcast helped pave the way for the incredible Star Wars fan community we see today, where podcast, discussion, and fan-driven content keep the love for the galaxy far, far away alive. At Clone Force 97, we believe in fostering an open and welcoming community where fans of all walks of life can share their passion for Star Wars. Today's roundtable is all about that. Hearing your stories, learning what brought you into the fandom, and celebrating the saga that connects us all. So let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to Clone Force 97. Obviously, we introduced ourselves off camera, but I'm Brandon. That's my co-host, Charles. Anthony, unfortunately, isn't with us this week. He had a passing in the family, so our thoughts are with him and his family. But to get things started, as most people who listen to this podcast know who we are, but do you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourself? We'll start with you, Eric.
Yeah, so I'm Eric. I'm with the channel Kyber Forged. Make mostly like Star Wars reviews, lightsaber sound font reviews, lore videos. I recently started a podcast with Star Wars Gazer, and we call that Gazer Forge. On Instagram and TikTok, and go by my cosplay name on there, Darth Scathe. With a K instead of C because, it's like the misspell intimidating words.
And Aaron, do you want to give us a little bit about yourself, where people can find you on socials and stuff?
Yeah, I'm Aaron. I am a Galactic Repertory Theater. You can find that on like Instagram, TikTok, Threads, etc. It's galactic_rep. Mostly what I do is stop motion animation videos using Star Wars characters, telling stupid, nerdy Star Wars themed jokes. That's basically what it is.
So kind of like what Donald Faison does as well. I don't know if you watch him.
I don't. I know who it is. I don't. I haven't seen his stop motion though.
Yeah, he does a lot of stuff with it. But so the first question we got, and I'll start by answering this one, is what first got you into Star Wars? Was it a movie, a book, a game, something else? For me, it's more personal. I have a cousin who has autism, and every time I went to my aunt's house, he was always watching Clone Wars, or on his PS2, he was playing like one of the Star Wars games. I think it was when the original Battlefronts were out, he was playing it. And I wasn't really big into Star Wars then, but I was always kind of wondering what he was doing because he was just always having a blast. And eventually I was like, let me figure out what all this fun's about. And so eventually it came to the point where like I would go over and we could actually have like conversations, and then those turned into like bloody knuckle lightsaber fights in the backyard.
And I think the order we had earlier, Eric, we'll go to you, man. What was that moment for you?
I would say, I think I was around 6. My mom, she kind of grew up in like prime, like Star Wars era. Like she graduated in 83. So she first showed me like A New Hope when I was like 6, and I just like watched it over and over and over again. And she told me like, there's other movies, right? And so, yeah, I just watched them and I was hooked.
Definitely. Aaron, what about you?
I don't honestly remember a time in my life where like Star Wars wasn't a part of it. I was born in 1974, so I saw the original Star Wars when I was, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't have seen it in 1977 because I would have been 3, but not long after that. So I saw it probably in the late 1970s for the first time, and just ever since then, like, was hooked on it and saw all the movies as they came out. So it's really just been a constant in my life for as long as I can possibly remember.
Dude, that's awesome. I was born in 1994. The first movie that I ever saw in theaters was The Phantom Menace when I was 4 years old. And it's only because I don't even think my uncle liked Star Wars. He just had heard the hype about the movie, and he was like, "Oh, I want to take Charlie to go and see this." And my mom did not want him to take me to the movies. My mother, is now almost 70, so she saw all of the original Star Wars in theaters when they came out, and she liked it, and she even owned them all on VHS, but she thought it was going to be too violent for me to go and see. So my uncle had hit her with the idea and was like, hey, I want to go take him to see this. My mom was like, absolutely not. You're not taking him to see that. And so my uncle was like, that's fine. And he would watch me on the weekends and take, I go stay with him. And he took me anyway. He was like, screw it. We're going to go see that movie. And he said I cried for the first however many minutes of the film until lightsabers turned on, and with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And then and same thing for me. It was like I was hooked on it immediately. I had my godmother, my Aunt Carolyn, before she passed away from cancer, episode 2, it came out. And I mean, she spent like $300 inside of Toys R Us buying me like lightsabers, Lego, action figures. Some I still have to this day. They're in storage. But yeah, so Star Wars, same thing where it's like I can't really remember a time where Star Wars wasn't there. That's where I started with it. It's one of my first memories is seeing that movie in theaters, because I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. My Aunt Carolyn, when I can't remember what TV channel, they were doing a TV spot where they showed a scene from Attack of the Clones before it had released, and it wasn't showing until midnight. And so she stayed up all night. I was staying at her house, and I fell asleep, and she woke me up at midnight to watch that scene from the Attack of the Clones. And it's the scene with Obi-Wan and Anakin chasing down the bounty hunter in the speeder. And yeah, so it's been a big part of my life for a long time.
I think the first Star Wars movie that I saw in theaters was Revenge of the Sith. And like that final scene where like Vader gets his suit and it's all shiny and crisp, and then you hear the breathalyzer turn on. Like I remember just watching that, but like I also remember like had like an immediate attachment to like Anakin, and to watch him get cut up like that, I was like, oh my god. I hadn't seen the originals and didn't watch them for much like longer. Like for me, Star Wars stopped and ended with the prequels. Like I didn't know there was something after that, because I only personally had access to the first, like to episodes 1, 2, and 3. So I was like, what happens next? And it wasn't really until right before Galaxy's Edge opened in Disney World that I watched all of them, because I wanted to know everything there was about Star Wars.
Well, like, what was that for you guys? Because you saw the originals first. So what was it like for, growing up and seeing the originals first and then the prequels coming out? Do you hate Jar Jar? Just be honest with me.
I love Jar Jar. I'm not kidding. I actually have, and you can't see it from here, obviously. I have like several Jar Jar like merch. Like I have plush, I have figures, shirts. I have the stop motion stuff I talked about before.
Yeah,
has a lot of Jar Jar Binks in it. I just unabashedly love him.
dude, he's sick. What about you, Eric?
Honestly, the first time around, other than Revenge of the Sith, I didn't really care for the prequels. It wasn't until after like I saw Clone Wars that it kind of added depth to the prequels, and like Anakin's fall doesn't feel so quick, and like you have Ahsoka in it, and there's like all these elements. So you have all the different clone troopers' personalities. Like there's so much that gets added to the prequels just by seeing Clone Wars. So I think Clone Wars kind of made all the prequels better for me.
Yeah, I've heard that opinion a lot, especially with Anakin's character. Where a lot of people, it brought people to love Anakin again and give Hayden Christensen that love. And Matt Lancer did an amazing job with voicing Anakin and bringing that character to life in an animated version. So that's awesome to hear. I believe the next portion we wanted to talk about, I lost it. There it is. So I'll start with you, Brandon, and then we'll just go in the same order. But what is it about Star Wars that keeps you guys coming back? Is it the storytelling, the characters, the themes, or is it something completely different?
So for me, it's mostly just like the sense of community. Obviously, especially since I created Clone Force 97, and since the fandom kind of split in half with the Acolyte, I was just like, you know what? People need to start really just enjoying these for what they are. And it's fan fiction. And it's what keeps me coming back is just that, one, like for any of the major films, the title scrolls, like to watch that whole scene go, and then you read what has previously happened, like what you need to know, and then after that they get into the movie. That keeps me hooked. But just seeing the name Star Wars, and then plus now living in Florida, being so close to Disney World, like being able to go to Galaxy's Edge, I wouldn't say whenever I want, because I do live a little far away now, but a lot more often than most people can. So it's just like, it's really just like the sense of community and getting to talk to people, because I'll be honest with you, most people know about Star Wars. Even if they act like they don't, you can have a conversation with most people about Star Wars.
Anybody will recognize Darth Vader. You know, he's one of the most iconic villains. Eric, what about you?
I would agree. As far as like outside of Star Wars, like the community definitely is a big part of it. Like everybody, for the most part, pretty welcoming. Like usually people, as far as cosplay goes, people are willing to give you some advice. As far as like lightsabers go, people will tell you like, hey, here's some like different ideas, or like here's some different trick like tutorials you can try. Like very open community. As far as the films go, the world, really, I just love like the worn, like weathered universe of like Star Wars, like how everything just looks beat up, and like it's very rare to see things pristine in Star Wars. So I think that's just kind of the nice touch of it. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Aaron, what about you?
I mean, I love the stories. I love, just kind of sitting back and being taken to the galaxy far, far away, regardless whether it's the movies or the shows. And what I love is that there's so many different types of stories thematically. You've got like Skeleton Crew, which is, a fun adventure. You've got Andor, which is much more serious. You've got the High Republic stuff. So there's so many stories in this galaxy, and they keep adding to it. They keep expanding upon it. I just love kind of getting sucked into that world.
Yeah, I can agree with everybody. For me, it's not just a nostalgia thing where it's like like if I ever watch episode 1, which is like my comfort movie, but the storytelling, and I just relate to the Jedi code a lot, and not just the Jedi code, but the idea of what the Jedi should be, which we don't get a lot of in the prequels, and we get a little bit of that in the original trilogy. But that sense of goodness and fighting for what's right and defending the downtrodden, those kinds of themes and stuff. Yeah.
That's my Jedi tattoo. I'm doing bad at it.
Oh, dude, that's sick. I plan on getting the Jedi symbol on my left arm. And but yeah, dude, it's those kinds of things where it's like, and don't get me wrong, I thoroughly enjoyed Andor. But like, if you give me Jedi content, I will eat that up. And so it's those kinds of things where I like the juxtaposition of the good guys versus the bad guys in this.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of that. And
I think another thing interesting too is that there isn't a huge barrier to entry for Star Wars. Like if you wanted to get into like Magic the Gathering, that kind of community, you're spending a lot of money to be involved, where like Star Wars, you can watch a movie or like pick up a book and just kind of read it. Another reason like why I started this podcast and started doing stuff, getting involved in the Star Wars community, was part of like a mental health thing that I'm on. And I was actually having this discussion earlier, like with my therapist. Like I was telling him about like very notable Star Wars channels, like Star Wars Theory, Stupendous Wave, Star Wars Explained, like people like that. And I was explaining it like those people might know more than me today, but that's only because they've read more. Like not like there's stuff that every single person in the community might know that other people might not know. So there isn't like just one person really being the keeper of the lore, as a lot of people like to say, because anybody could technically become the top dog in terms of knowledge at any moment.
It'll never be me. I hate reading. I do enough to like find out about the stuff that I like. Like the first book I've read since high school was Jedi Battle Scars, because I'm such a big fan of Cal Kestis. And so I needed to know what happens in between Fallen Order and Survivor. Like I had to know. So I read that whole book in like 3 days, because I so when it's like things that I'm like hyper focused on, the rest of it, I'll let you guys explain to me on the internet. And I know enough that I can sound very knowledgeable about things, especially because Brandon tells me a lot about the High Republic novels. So I'm like, I'll be in a comment section like, well, actually, but I didn't read that book. I probably will at some point. We plan on doing a book club. But to segue us into our next question, so favorite Star Wars era and why? What is, and this is going to be completely biased on all of us for probably what we grew up with. But, Brandon, I'll start with you. What is your favorite Star Wars era? Why is that?
I might actually let recency take bias here, and my favorite Star Wars era right now is the High Republic. Like, by reading all the novels and listening to all the audio dramas that they do, it's just a period of time where the Jedi aren't so dogmatic. You start to see bits and pieces of why what happens in the prequels happens, but it's not. Right now, they're really living high. They're really trusting in the Force. Later in the novels, like Elzar Mann and Avar Kriss, who are two like main staples of the novels, like they start like, I guess hooking up is like the best word, and it's like the Force is what brings them together. It's not like what they think, like, or what Anakin believes, where he has to hide his love for Padme. Like, these people know that the Force is calling them together, and they actually do better because of that. They both know that there's sacrifices that need to be made, and they're willing to, to sacrifice each other, but that's not really the right way to put it, in order to do what's right. So they don't let anything overcome them, and the Jedi are just all-powerful. Plus, the ships of this period, I think we might see them in that kids show, but they're called vectors, and their blasters for the vectors are controlled by their lightsabers. Like, the lightsaber is the key for the ship.
Are you talking about Star Wars Jedi Adventures?
Yeah, I think that's the one with the High Republic one.
Yeah,
I don't know if they. I haven't fully watched anything of that yet, so I don't know if they show vectors. But vectors have to be by far my favorite ship.
Definitely. Eric, what about you?
Probably say original era, because I think that was that's what really hooked me.
Yeah, original, definitely.
Yeah, it just, that's what hooked me first, and that's just kind of what got me into it in the first place. So, that it's always going to resonate with me the most.
True. Aaron, what about you?
I'm actually going to say the prequels. I grew up with the originals, but just seeing like so many Jedi in action and seeing Yoda in action, and just the kind of like the light and darkness really battling in that way in the prequels. I love that era. I love we still had kind of the goodness of characters like Jar Jar and Padme against the evil of Palpatine. So yeah, I'm gonna say prequel.
So that'll make it 2 for prequels, because that is actually probably, like I said, there's bias here. It's the one I grew up with. Like, I would never not rewatch Revenge of the Sith and be like, maybe I'm in another timeline. Maybe he doesn't go bad this time. Maybe everything works out. Maybe he has his kids and they, and then it ends the same way. And I'm like, damn it. All right.
Who could have seen that coming?
Yeah. It's not like I haven't seen it 50 times in a row, but definitely I would say that, just because, one, Ewan McGregor did such an amazing job. Like, especially when you go back and you watch the original trilogy and how well he portrayed Obi-Wan and took from Alec Guinness's performance, and then but also made the character younger, but you can see how he turns into the hermit that is Ben Kenobi, and amazing actor. And yeah, like I said, it was my childhood. I will say the era I am most excited to see, however, is I want to see what happens after the sequel trilogy. I want to see if Rey creates a Jedi school and starts training younglings. Now that we officially should not have any more First Order Stormtrooper-esque anything. We may see remnants of that, right? But I want to see what the next big bad is after all of these things. Whether that be like from, if they do take, because they have referenced or used references from the Legends novels. So I would love to see the Yuuzhan Vong, who I don't know a lot about other than the pictures I've seen, and they're terrifying to look at. And so, I'm super excited to see what comes after all of this, and I believe that brings us into our next key point, which is there a Star Wars character that has a profound impact on you, and what about them speaks to you? And Brandon, once again, we'll start with you.
So I'm going to give 2 answers, because one of these was one of the first books I read before I started my channel, and that is Darth Plagueis. Like, I read the Darth Plagueis Legends novel after The Acolyte because it was heavily quoted, and by this point, if you guys haven't looked at my channel, I think it's misquoted for why people hate The Acolyte, because they say they gets the lore wrong based specifically off this book. There could be other things they got wrong, but I think they followed that book to a T, and like the way Plagueis orchestrates everything, like he keeps Tenebris alive in like stasis and just does experiments on his body for years, and you see like how interwoven he's into everything to make sure that everything that happens at the time that it needs to, which means like he is like, out of all the Sith, I think that nobody's more calculated than him. Yes, he ultimately gets defeated by Palpatine, mostly because it's the first time he slept in like 20 years. And it was like at that point that the Force called out to Palpatine and was like, get him. Because like I don't know if the Force was like, we might not have another chance at this. But in terms of Legends character, he resonates with me the most because he's so analytical and methodical with every decision that he makes. Like he kind of views all the outcomes that could happen. And that's me, like, as a person without all like the dark side stuff attached. But then as like in terms of canon, like the character that has an impact, and it's not like just because I love seeing them, has to be Chopper. Like, Chopper is a droid on a mission. He's down to annihilate anybody in his way. I think.
Yeah, he's a war criminal. We get it. We know.
Yeah,
He's like everyone's favorite
yeah.
war criminal.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just like, out of all the droids, like R2-D2 has a lot of personality, especially like in the prequels. You don't see it, like you see it a little bit in the original trilogy, but they were able to make him more sassy in the prequels just because they had better technology at the time at their disposal. But he's sassy, but I think that Chopper is what they wanted R2-D2 to be. Like, this guy who can pretty much just do whatever. You don't have to tell him. Like, he's not, in terms of that team, he's not a droid on that team. He is part of the team. Like, he's willing to be painted. I think
put
Charles
willing
talked about it in one
quotations.
of our.
He's willing. He's never happy about it.
Yeah, but he's always down to do what's for the team. But I remember there was one time, I think you talked about this on one of our first episodes, that there was a droid that the team was like originally like interested in, and they were like, "Oh my god, he's so cool!" And like Chopper yeets him out the airlock.
It's the Imperial droid, and
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Yeah.
They weren't even in space yet, dude. They were like super high off the ground, and they had
And
rescued.
it's like right off the.
Yeah, they had rescued this Imperial droid, and Zeb was like, "Yeah, we're gonna keep him." And then Chopper just pushes him out of the bottom of the ship, and you're like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right, bro is malicious."
I think as of right now, he has, and I don't know who did the calculations because I don't know how he's up there. Because Anakin slaughters a lot of people. But I think he like has the most confirmed kills because he crashed ships into other ships, so he has a lot of collateral damage kills. But those are my two answers.
What about you, Eric?
I would say probably like as far as one that resonates a lot with me, I'd probably say Starkiller.
Okay,
Oh, I love that one.
Because I mean, he just kind of has that dichotomy of the light and the dark, and he kind of just he's, for one, my favorite character because he's just other level powerful. That's why he'll never be canon.
Yeah.
Dude kills Force ghosts.
unless they nerf him really hard, they would have to nerf the crap out of him to make him canon.
I always love just playing like the Ultimate Sith Edition, like the fact that he kills Obi-Wan's Force ghosts. That's just insane. But anyway. Yeah, like I love the story, not so much in The Force Unleashed 2, because you could tell they kind of sped that one up as quick as possible to get it out.
Yeah, it was a much
but
shorter
the first
game
one,
too.
like, it was EA just like, we have to have this next one out. So there it went. But yeah, like his whole like story, like it's kind of a reverse Vader almost, where like he's just bad at the beginning and then he's like seeking to be a hero at the end. Like, So he basically has the reverse of what Anakin goes through.
Yeah. No, that
haven't-
game, I just remember playing that when I was like 10 years old, being like, dude, I've never seen anybody this strong before in my life. And I'm like, this is insane, dude. Aaron, what about you?
I think I'm going to go with, it's a tough call between Yoda or Qui-Gon. I think I'm going to lean towards Yoda just because he was always my favorite growing up. Because you have this, this wise Jedi Master, and then when the prequels hit, and you really got to see him be a badass, and because he's like wise, but he also has kind of that goofy sense of humor. You get to see, especially like in the prequels and in the Clone Wars and stuff, where he's like, yeah, he's a little sarcastic, he's a little sassy, but he still ultimately wants to do good. And Qui-Gon kind of the same thing. Like Qui-Gon, he's just like, especially in the prequels when the Jedi are kind of have lost their way and they've become, like we said, dogmatic. He still kind of adheres to what the Jedi Order is supposed to be. And I don't know if any of y'all have read the fairly recent novel, The Living Force.
I have it.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I
So
haven't read
good.
it yet.
Yeah, it really plays into that because it has a lot of Qui-Gon, and it really talks more about him just being like, no, this is what the Jedi are supposed to be, helping people, not helping, politicians. And so I kind of love that he still got the Jedi mentality even when the Jedi Order is waning. So yeah, those two are probably my two tops.
They
Definitely.
teach so much to them. Like Qui-Gon in that one simple lesson teaches them so much that that book is a little interesting for me because I don't know why they don't continue to learn from that. Like we later learn that somebody in the temple is like under the influence of Sidious, but that doesn't really have an effect on the council members. Like they all learn to be better at the end of that book, but then they go back to being dogmatic afterwards. Like I don't know if you had the same kind of thought process after finishing that.
I don't know if I got that. Like I totally can see that. I think it was. I mean, it's possibly it's like a too little, too late kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like they still definitely were Jedi. They probably they still had the desire to do good. It's just I think by that point they were so lost in the mires of what was happening that they couldn't get out of it.
Lost in the sauce, baby.
My favorite thing about that book, too, is that it gives you a lot about each member of the council, because in the prequels, you don't get a lot from all of them. Other than, was it Tales of the Empire, the one that just happened? Like, you don't really see anything about Yaddle, but this book, every single member of the council has their own piece of the story to tell.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. To really see each of the prequel Jedi kind of have a moment in that book was spectacular.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's hard to say like what character impacted me the most. I mean, as an adult, I would say Anakin Skywalker, because his rise and fall and then rebirth right at the end of his life makes a lot more sense to me now that I've lived life, and I can see when I was young, I was very all for doing good, and then I began to make a lot of mistakes in my late teens, early 20s, and then now in my 30s where I've like gotten back to that sense of, I guess, bewilderment and joy, that I had as a child. I'm like, I understand what happened to him better. But I will say Luke Skywalker, I think, is the most impactful to me just because he was a farm boy, who all he dreamt was this great adventure, going off to be with his friends and fly starships. And then for him to have this amazing arc where at the end of it, he's a Jedi Master, he's defeated the greatest Sith in the galaxy, essentially, besides Sidious. And he doesn't lose himself to the anger and to the hatred that Vader was trying to feed him into feeling their entire last confrontation. So that was a big one for me, I think, is when I saw the original trilogy. And, not that I understood it as a kid, but now that I watch it as an adult, the themes are a lot more clear to me.
To continue your Luke thing, though, like I just read Heir to the Jedi. I don't know if you guys have read that one.
I've read that one, yeah.
But I just finished it, and that one was so interesting. Like the stuff that Luke thinks of and like how he deals with grief. Like in this book, he has it all bottled up and he doesn't know how to deal with it, and he knows like he'll have to move on. But he also has like a love interest that right at the end of the book, like he's finally starting to learn how to connect with the Force, and like the first time that he's really connecting with it, he can sense that she has just passed away due to a some kind of like explosive going off. And like I was like, dude, like so much grief for this kid. But like also he's kind of like simple in a way, because on one of their early missions he's reminiscing about Tashi Station, and he goes, wait, I never picked up my power converters. I hope they still have them.
Have you read Shadow of the Sith yet?
Yeah, I've read that one as well.
That was really good, kind of like Luke after Jedi and kind of like on the journey to become, the older,
I feel so
wiser
bad
Luke.
for Rey. She was so close throughout the entire novel of being rescued by Luke.
And Lando.
And every step of the way, the parents kind of made a decision to move Rey.
Yeah.
And ultimately, but he leaves her in the care of the guy on Jakku, like the guy who gives out all like the
Unkar
portions. Yep. And then like you get to see what was the name of the assassin that was sent after them?
Ochia Bestoon.
Yeah, Ochia Bestoon. Like that scene that they show you as a flashback, that happens in real time in that book if you two haven't read it. But like they get to show you like where is the girl? And it's like somewhere you'll never find her. And then like they never go back to Jakku because that was the place of like the Empire's greatest defeat.
Yeah, definitely. And so to get us into the next one, this is going to be about the fandom and community connection. So how has being a Star Wars fan connected you to others? Have you made friendships? Have you attended events or contributed to the fandom in any way that you like? Brandon?
In a meaningful way? I hope so. We've been doing our podcast now for like 10 weeks, and I hope we've contributed something, if not just showing at least how bad I am at predicting what happens in shows, because we never got Hondo Onaka at all in Skeleton Crew, and I predicted in every episode that we were getting them. Star Wars has definitely connected me to people. I mean, I started the podcast with Anthony and Charles, who I had no prior knowledge of beforehand, and I found out that Charles lives relatively close. We still haven't hung out yet, though. But we'll do it one day.
But you have to say it like that.
I don't know. We just haven't hung out. It just hasn't worked out.
I didn't have a car. I just bought one.
Yeah, that's what they all say. But it's also allowed us to connect, like with you two. Like we're having this roundtable discussion, which is something I wanted right from the very beginning. Like I posted on Threads, like I wanted to connect with more people and have more conversations because nobody views Star Wars the same way. Every single person has a different meaning to what it is. I've connected with people at Comic-Cons. I went to MegaCon a couple years ago, and then I went to I don't know what they call it now in Philadelphia because that's where I'm originally from, but they used to be called WizardCon. So I've gotten to meet like some really cool people who have some really, really unique stories. And then as well as like with that, like my family has started to think of Star Wars differently. I'm going to leave the camera for a second, but my uncle was at an art show and just picked up a piece of art and he immediately thought of me. So I'm going to grab that real quick to show you guys. So he finds this piece of artwork at an art show and it just says, leave your weapons at the door. And it's like all the different weapons from Star Wars.
Oh, that's cute. I like that.
All just randomly painted
cool.
and everybody's there to see Max Rebo.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah, so it's all different weapons. I don't know why Grogu wasn't allowed to bring his carrier in, but I guess that's fine. But there's so much different things. Like you don't have to feel like bad because somebody's walking around like in a $10,000 Darth Vader suit that you can't afford. Like everybody's able to connect. Not every person has the same piece of merchandise.
Yeah, dude. Eric, what about you?
I mean, honestly, since I started my like channel, I've made like some amazing like friends. I don't know if you guys ever seen on Instagram, but that group, the Sith Ascendancy.
I have. Oh well, I think they're on TikTok as well.
In Disneyland.
They're on TikTok as well.
Too.
Yeah, I follow them there.
Yeah. I'm friends with a lot of dudes there, and then I had one guy, Star Wars Gazer, actually approached me about starting a podcast. So made a bunch of friends through him. Star Wars nerd, Star Wars Sith, Pop the Bounty Hunter. Great guys. Love like doing different shows with them. So yeah, I mean, especially over like the last like month that I've had my channel, probably made some of the best friends I have.
Definitely, dude. Aaron, what about you?
I didn't even know that channel existed, and now I'm looking at some of like the cosplay that they've done, and this stuff is creepy in like an excellent way. Like I don't know if this
They're
guy's
pretty
supposed to be.
talented.
Is he supposed to be Malgus? Yeah, he is supposed to be Malgus. That is insane. That is beautiful.
They're on like a good term with like Disney, where they can kind of push the limits of what like Disney will allow, like cosplay wise, at the park. So they kind of have like an agreement at like some levels of what they can and can't do. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's sick, dude. Cool. I'm cosplaying next time I go. Well, maybe not on a hardcore level, because I don't want to get turned away.
Plus,
I'll be
it's
mad.
Also, it probably gets hot down in Florida.
yeah, it's so hot.
It has to be rough wearing a tunic and like the
Yeah.
Florida heat.
Yeah,
Dude.
I've got two different Galaxy's Edge outfits, like original characters, and one of them has a jacket, and one of them more just like a cape, because it depends on kind of how hot it is. I can wear the different ones.
Yeah. And so Aaron, what about you? Like, how has the community brought you?
I mean, it's kind of like something someone said earlier with just kind of everyone on some level knowing what Star Wars is, and just even at work, I've had long conversation with one of my coworkers today, earlier today, about Rogue One. So you kind of, once you kind of realize that someone else is a fan, you start connecting, you start talking, and on social media, on Threads and on Instagram and stuff and TikTok, I've definitely, that's how I found y'all, and it was just we started talking about
Definitely.
Star Wars and then followed each other, and even before I started doing the stop motion, I started that as a hobby during the pandemic shutdown because I was out of work. But prior to that, my page, Galactic Repertory Theater on Instagram. So I work in live theater. I'm a stagehand, like stage crew, and I collected for years the little Galactic heroes figures, those like play school kids figures. They look like
Yeah.
2 inches tall. They look like the children version of the characters. And so like over 10 years ago, I started asking the people I worked with, these actors that I worked with and crew I worked with over the years on all these different shows, to pose holding different characters. So I'd be like, oh, hey, do you want to like pose holding Darth Vader, Chewbacca, and stuff like that? And so, if you go on Instagram and just scroll back, years and years and years, you can see all these actors and crew members from all these different productions, these stage productions, posing with action figures. And what I found in doing that was that it was this incredible icebreaker when I would talk to people, because I'd be like, oh, I want to take a photo with Star Wars characters. Do you have a character you prefer? Some people are like, whatever, I don't care, just pick one for me, and I try to, base it. Some people are like, oh my God, I love this character. Do you have this, like, you have this obscure character? Oh my God. And like, or I would start taking pictures of people, and then other people in the production will come up to me and be like, when do I get my photo? And you have this character, and
Do you
it
have
was
Ben
this great way to kind of,
Quadaneros?
they never made in that version. I do have an action figure of him, like the articulated figure.
Yeah.
They never made the minifigures of him, and it's really funny to kind of see the even people who are like casual fans, they'd be like, oh, you know what, I really love like Boba Fett because he's cool looking, or the people who are suddenly like, oh my God, you have Admiral Akbar. So it was really a great way. You kind of realize that everybody has at least some superficial knowledge of the characters and the world. So it really was this great icebreaker and this great kind of connection point to talk to people.
Yeah, definitely, dude. Yeah, that'd be crazy if you went to ask somebody for that picture and they're like, "Do you have Ben Quadaneros?" And it's like,
That'd be amazing.
or
remember,
like Max Rebo.
So Max Rebo I haven't bought because the Galactic Hero figure is just prohibitively expensive online.
Jeez, I bet though.
It's like, it's one of those annoying ones. It's like, I have a Droopy McCool.
I forgot about that name.
But then every now and again, you get somebody like, I worked with someone and they were the bar manager for the theater space I worked in. And she was like, do you have the bartender from the cantina in, the original movie? And I looked up on eBay, and sure enough, they made a Wooer figure in the Galactic Heroes, and he was cheap, so I bought him. So, it's, has a photo.
Actually
She has a
awesome.
photo with him. Somebody asked for Porkins once, who I have. So it really is kind of funny. People who are like, oh, I don't care, just, I don't know, one of the droids or something, because they don't know, they don't care. They're the ones who are like, do you have this random character? And that's my jam. Like all the Glove Shidos, like that is like that is my thing. I love the obscure aliens. I love collecting. Like I have so many Ithorian pieces of merchandise on my shelf.
That's actually awesome.
So
I love
yeah,
the
it's just
Ithorians just because of Knights of the Old Republic.
I've always loved them. Like, it's just I even remember like even as far back as being a kid, when you see the Katina scene, it's all those crazy aliens. Just the Ithorian just always stuck with me because it was so alien and so different and so unique. But yeah, so that's to bring it back around to the question you asked, an hour ago of me. Yeah, it's just what you say Star Wars, and you're either gonna get people who are like, meh, but they've heard of it, or the people who are like, yeah, let's talk about this.
Definitely.
And then you connect.
Yeah.
Speaking of aliens, what was it like seeing non-CGI Yoda, like when the Phantom Menace came out?
So I don't know, like I again going back to Yoda being my favorite character, from the earlier question, because I'm short and wise and sassy. I was ready for that would land. Thank you. I love Puppet Yoda, but I kind of CGI was a little creepy, but then when you got him like in combat, I was like, you know what, I'm okay with this because we had him in full on like badass Jedi mode. So I was okay with it. I am kind of glad they went back to puppetry for the Last Jedi. I think that really just brought it home for me. And his scene in Last Jedi was just, I mean, I tear up with him talking about.
That was Rise of Skywalker, wasn't it? Oh no, you're right. You're totally right.
Yes.
I'm dumb. I'm an idiot.
Yeah,
yeah, that was Last Jedi.
Yeah, the when he's talking about the apprentices, the children being the masters are what they grow beyond. Especially as a parent myself, like that line landed really hard. So yeah, I forget what we were talking about, but somehow I brought it back to Yoda.
Yeah. The younger Puppet Yoda, in my opinion, just looks like he was addicted to spice, and he looks like Doc from
Look, dude, he's in his retirement.
Future.
Let him do what he's gonna do, bro. If Yoda wants death sticks, Yoda gets death sticks.
He's 900 years old. He's allowed to partake a little bit.
Yeah, dude. But no, just to bring it back to the original question before we move on to the next one, just as far as like what the community's brought me, man, it's like I've been a career musician since I was 16 years old, toured a lot, played a lot of music, and I got into the industry. And that is not a welcoming place whatsoever because, besides like maybe friends and everybody, that you're in competition with 99% of people you encounter, right? Coming into the Star Wars community, like I said before we started recording, like the first person that started replying to me and like followed me and like gave me advice was our friend Brent, who can't be with us tonight. He might jump in at some point, but he's at Nerdy Brent. Dude is, super genuine guy, one of the nicest people I've met in life, and if it wasn't for this community, I would never have met Brandon, who him and I talk all the time, either about Star Wars or just about random crap going on in our lives, as well as like we live stream Lego Star Wars, and then we do the podcast and we get to meet more people like you guys, which is it's so much fun because when I was a kid, nobody really liked Star Wars at least where I went to school, or nobody talked about it because, in elementary and middle school, you're on your way to trying to be as cool as possible. And it definitely wasn't cool to like Star Wars as much as I did. I will say my friend Lester that's going to be going to Disney World with us for May 4th is he likes Star Wars. He was never as into it as I was, but he would just always go along with my shenanigans when it came to Star Wars. You know what I mean? But now it's like with the internet and Instagram, TikTok, and Threads and Blue Sky, I get to meet so many more amazing people who love this fandom just as much as I do, and who are as passionate about it as I am. And so I'm really happy and lucky that at 30 years old, I've finally gotten back into it. And I'm like, there's people like me who just do Star Wars stuff all day and, like Star Wars as much as I do. I absolutely adore that.
And I love that. Oh, sorry to cut you off there.
No. Go for it.
What I was gonna say was what I love about you mentioned like social media like TikTok and Blue Sky and all that and Threads. I love that because you're encountering so many people. You're gonna find people who like this. Obviously have debates, have discussions and all that, but also like the same things. Like I didn't realize there were other Jar Jar Binks fans out there until I got on social media because he's a very divisive character to put it very politely.
Shout out my boy Ahmed Best.
I met him at a convention. And he is the sweetest dude.
Keller and Beck, baby. I got a Lego set I still got to build.
I want that one. I want just because of that minifig. I don't even care about the rest of what's on there.
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited for this one.
That's awesome. But like, then I went on like TikTok, and all these other people like also, shouting out Jar Jar Binks. Actually become friends with people on TikTok because of that, because I would post something about Jar Jar, and then they'd be like, I see one of their videos about there's a woman, I'm blanking on her name now, who did a Jar Jar Binks Inquisitor cosplay for a convention.
Nice.
Which was like full on like Inquisitor outfit, but with a Jar Jar Binks mask that she designed or she decorated to match it. And I'm like, amazing. Now we're friends on TikTok because of like this bond,
Yeah.
So I love that you can just like, there's someone out there that likes the same things you do, and I love that.
Yeah.
I think Jar Jar got more respect too after that Reddit theory came out that like Jar Jar's a secret Sith.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody was like, wait, is this real? And then like nobody really confirms or denies it. And then Disney kind of did that like Lego what if show.
Yeah, rebuild the galaxy.
Which was so good. I think what it boils down to is when my generation went to see the prequels, a lot of people my age didn't like them. I loved them because I'm always going to try to look for the good and the fun in the Star Wars projects and not focus on the negative, because that just sounds exhausting. And I like Star Wars too much to do that. But like, so I really enjoyed them. But of course, a lot of people of my generation were like, these suck. These are terrible. I hate Jar Jar Binks. But then you have the people who were like, who are younger, who grew up with those movies, who like Jar Jar because he was fun and funny, and now they're the adults. So now you've got these fans who are now kind of like the we're now the age that I will, I was when I saw it, kind of thing. So I feel like the fandom with each generation of movies evolves, and so people that liked it are now adults, and then the sequels, fortunately got so much hate, but then 20 years from now, when the kids who saw it and fell in love with Rey grew up, who knows, So I think some of it's a generational thing as well.
Definitely.
Now,
Definitely.
This is a question more for you, Aaron, and Eric, because you guys grew up with like the main trilogy or like right before the prequels and stuff. Obviously now like we see stuff about like Ryan Gosling becoming a lead, or like we hear that like the Rey movie lost another writer, and then finds another writer, and we just have access to all this media. Like, so we're not going to be surprised with a Star Wars film at any, like we're able to stay in the know at any point of like, hey, Disney's already posted a release schedule. A Star Wars movie, including Rey, has to come out in like 2026 or 2027. So what was it like, I guess like back then with Star Wars? Like, was it after the original trilogy, was there still a lot of news? Was there a what's next thing, or was it just mostly Legends material and EU material?
There was nothing, because obviously we didn't have the internet, so obviously we can't be online, finding our people and finding our fandom. It was all basically the friends you hung out with talking about it. And, like Charlie said, and I think it might be a little bit different now, but when I was growing up, the cool kids weren't talking about Star Wars. The nerds at the back table in the cafeteria were hanging out together talking about Star Wars. But we couldn't look at our phones and be like, oh, what's the latest news on the Rey movie? Because we didn't have cell phones to do that with. And there was no indication that we were ever getting more movies, and we didn't have any TV shows. So yeah, it was like you get these Legends material with some of those stories were great and some of them were not good. But I remember when the first Timothy Zahn series came out, Heir to the Empire, which was such a big deal, because here's this big story featuring the main characters, continuing the saga. Like, that was huge. But other than that, yeah, it was like, it was nothing. It was just, you had your original trilogy, and that's what you had, and you had some books and some comics, and that was it.
Now, was there a lot of uproar when Lucasfilm announced that they were, instead of continuing the story of Luke, Leia, and Han, that they were instead, like, I wouldn't say wasting their prime, but like jumping back instead of continuing with the actors that they had already established?
I don't recall that. How about you, Eric? I don't recall there being uproar.
No, because honestly, no one really cared. Like, really,
I think we're just so excited to get Star Wars again.
You look at like how big Star Wars is now, from the mid 80s to like the mid 90s, nobody cared. Like, there was not a person out there to give a crap about Star Wars. Like, it was big, but it was only big to nerds. Like, it was not pop culturally big. They just kind of like left everything alone. Like, Luke literally turned to the dark side with a Palpatine clone, like, in the comics, like whatever. So, I mean, yeah, they could do whatever they want. They got more freedom because you didn't have that like magnifying glass that they have now. And it wasn't until like it blew back up with Phantom Menace, and it never really left after that. But that whole period in between there, you would see figures, you'd see comics, you'd see books, but there was really no other. There was that Droids cartoon, there was the Ewoks movie.
Hey, you guys got the Star Wars Christmas special, all right?
But
you had
even
the Christmas
even
special.
the toys,
I watched it every Christmas.
even in the figures, like, you only had so many characters because you only had the 3 movies, and they weren't making figures of legends. So it's like, okay, here's my 16th Luke figure, and they're getting, and they're getting more and more obscure. And I remember I had these vehicles, like one, like they held like one figure, and they weren't even in the movies. They were just like inspired. I forget what they were called, but they're just like inspired by Star Wars.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right?
Kidder was just run out of ideas, and they were just like, whatever. Here's like single character in a vehicle.
But they were like, but they had the contract still, so they were like, all right, we got to sell more stuff.
I had this.
Turn them
out. I had this thing. It was this little like gray like triangle with like wings that popped out. And you could put one figure, and a little gun on the front. And this thing never appeared in any movie, but it was like a cool Star Wars toy because that's all. Like that's that's all you have.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Man,
that's
no, dude.
Yeah,
trust me.
And now it's like,
it's been 10 years since we've had a movie now, and it's like, it's weird because it's a long time, but because like we're so fortunate to have like Disney do a publishing initiative to focus on something, and then plus like you have TV shows, and then Disney went back to finish the Clone Wars. Like, we've had so much else that like it hasn't really. I said 10 years since we've had a movie, but what I meant was, it's been 10 years since the sequel started. It's been, what has it been? It's been 6 years since we've had a movie.
But also, I think nerd culture has changed too. I mean, nerd culture in general is way more mainstream than it ever was when I was growing up.
Cool to be a nerd now.
It is. And like,
unless you talk to the women I've talked to, but
you gotta marry a nerd. That's what
I'm trying to find one, dude. It's hard. It's really hard. We'll get there eventually.
And then you do what I do, and you have a child and raise a nerd. Make sure that the cycle continues. But even at work, like I'm talking to these kids who are in their 20s, and I was just talking to another stagehand who's like 23 about Dungeons and Dragons and video games, and they're all into this stuff, and it's like, so I feel like there's as it's become more mainstream, there's been kind of a shift where it is. And social media has had a big play in that too, because you know what? I want to go online and post a silly video with a Jar Binks action figure, and people are going to respond to it. So I love the way things are now because, as Eric can attest, I mean, it was a dark, lonely time for Star Wars fans in like the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah. So look, I know Eric's got to leave soon, so I want to try to get us through our last few little segments, so we'll try to do this as rapid fire as we can. But so with the future of Star Wars, is there a new movie, TV shows, expanded stories on the way? Like, what excites you guys the most about the future of Star Wars? And Brandon, we'll start with you, and then we'll just move around.
Well, what excites me is to see what's going to happen with Rey. Like what I was mentioning to Aaron, like if they had some kind of feeling like they're wasting the prime of like Mark Hamill and stuff like that, like because where they jumped when the sequel started, they were old, like Obi-Wan was old in the original trilogy, so like you didn't get to see them kind of react their prime. Now like we're going to get Daisy Ridley and hopefully John Boyega, like we're gonna be able to see them act their prime age in Star Wars, hopefully rebuild something that can last for generations. And like, so there's a lot to be hopeful for that. The thing that concerns me is that Disney has been a little hit or miss in the writing, kind of like George Lucas was when he was doing it as well. But they've had times where their writing hasn't been good, and they've spent a bunch of money to do it. And there's been times where, like, with not as much money, like with the Skeleton Crew, and they absolutely like hit it out of the park. So, the concern is don't keep us waiting for so long and then produce bad writing, which I'm glad that they're doing their due diligence and keep getting new writers if somebody isn't producing what they have. But I know, Eric, you have to get going soon, so I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, I got a live show here. So,
No, you're good.
but yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot. Like, I think there's a lot of good things on the horizon. Like, the Mando movie is going to be great, I feel like. Andor, I loved Andor. The Ahsoka, they're just starting to get ready to film that. And then there's the rumored things that I keep hoping they announce. Like, there's been the rumor of a Starkiller animated series that I would lose my mind for. There's been the rumors of Old Republic live action series I would go crazy for.
Yeah.
Like, I just keep
Fingers crossed, baby. All you can do is hope.
yes.
Definitely. Aaron, what about you?
I'm excited to see more of the kind of off the beaten path stories. Like, I loved Skeleton Crew. It is, I think, I was going to say The Acolyte's my favorite TV show, and The Skeleton Crew came out, and just
Definitely.
so I love to see the kind of things off the beaten path from the main saga. You know, Skeleton Crew, which was this whole new cast of characters with a whole new story, which aside from a couple of mentions of like, you know, Alderaan and the war, really had nothing to do with the Skywalker saga. And you know, Acolyte, which was the High Republic, which is such an amazing series and saga in and of itself. So yeah, I really hope we get more of these stories that flesh out the other aspects of the Star Wars universe above and beyond the core Skywalker saga.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, I would just be really excited to see what happens after the sequel trilogy and what happens outside of the main conflict, which we've seen in the originals and the sequels, which is this overreaching empire. So I'm just excited. I'm the kind of person, there's not one thing I'm more excited for than the next. Like, I can't wait to see Mandalorian and Grogu. I really hope they make a Knights of the Old Republic remake game. I mean, it's still technically in the works, and I love Knights of the Old Republic, dude. It's still, I go back and replay it several times a year, both 1 and 2. I think 2 is more my favorite because it's less personal, and your character gets to feel like their own character in the universe, even though I know that there's a character that is based on and there's books about him or her. But I love those games to death. I love a role-playing Star Wars game where I get to make decisions and be like, do I just want to kill this dude, or am I going to figure out what he needs and help him out and because I have to get full light side points every time. I just have to. Like, but now I know how to do it without even blinking. You know, I know exactly what to say, how to solve the puzzles, and so I'm like, all right, I need them to revamp this game. And then going into our next and almost last, we're gonna do like a rapid fire one word. Well, not really one word, but just quick question and answers. But really quick before that, your Star Wars legacy. If you could introduce Star Wars to anyone who has never seen it before, where would you start and why? Brandon?
I'm starting with The Phantom Menace. I think it would be too confusing to show somebody episode 4, but like, hey, this was the first release, and then have to then jump back afterwards. So I would start with Phantom Menace, which is kind of interesting in its own right, because like I have a niece and nephew who are younger, like they're under the age of 10, and you show them the prequels, which kind of hold up with today's technology, and then you jump into the original trilogy, and they're like, why is it worse? Like, for their perspectives, because like what they have in the prequels and what they have in the sequels is good for them because it's still modernish technology, but they're not of the age where they can appreciate what George Lucas was able to create with the material he had at the time. So there'll be a time for them to have appreciation for it, but I would definitely start with Phantom Menace.
Eric, what about you?
Well, I got a 5-year-old, so I had to kind of pick, like, for her, where's the best kind of intro, and she liked Rey, so I started the sequel trilogy, and then figured like, hey, you like these movies? There's stuff that happened before this, and then just kind of take her back from there, because I kept trying hard to get her in episode 1, and it just wasn't hitting with her, and because I just like say, oh, you're going to love episode 1, like you got all this stuff, like it's literally like great for kids, and it just wasn't working. So like, and once she saw Rey, like he just kind of loved her as a character. So I was like, let's go ahead and go to the sequel trilogy. So
we'll meet you where you're at. Screw it.
The animated shows I found have worked as well. Like my niece is 7, and for some reason, like I just caught her. She was messing with her iPad, and she's just randomly watching episodes of Rebels, just out of order. She was like, "I'm going to start season 2, episode 5. This seems like a good place."
Sure, get her
for
into
her.
Clone Wars. She does like Clone Wars.
Yeah, and dude, and it's fair in Clone Wars. You don't really there is a chronological order, but the whole order of the show is out of order. So like whatever.
Have you tried on Resistance yet? Like, it's not my favorite in terms of the animated shows, but it's bright and colorful, and like the characters it's a little funnier and lighter, I think.
I have considered it because I had tried a few episodes myself because like I loved like Clone Wars, I loved Rebels. Resistance isn't quite those, but
Resistance is not my favorite, but it might be good for kids. Like, it might capture her attention.
It definitely gives that like it kind of gives me vibes of like a 90s Superman cartoon. Like it's way lighthearted. It's very light. There's barely any like darker stuff that happens in it. Like it's
and some of the characters are really fun and funny. Yeah, you know what? I would say give it a try, but that's just me.
And so, Aaron,
my work.
Where would you start a young fan on their Star Wars journey?
As much as I love doing things in the story order, as much as I want to say start with episode 1, I'm gonna say start with episode 4. I'm gonna say start with go with release order, and I think it's because, and it kind of plays a little bit what Eric was saying, was episode 4. I feel it's just captured your attention, and it's so exciting and so much fun, and it's so innocent in a way. So I feel like, get the hooks in with the original trilogy, and then go back and do 1, 2, 3, and then 7, 8, 9. And also I think, and from a technology standpoint, I think it works because you've got, kind of the beaten down, you got the 70s era technology, for that. And I feel kind of like it flows. Okay, this is what it looks like after 20 years of the Empire, and then you go back to what it was before. So I'm going to say release order.
Okay. Yeah, I think personally, just because I am about to start, I've talked my sister-in-law into it enough where I'm going to start trying to introduce Star Wars to my 6-year-old nephew. And then personally, there's 2 places I would start, and I'm not sure which one I would choose just because I haven't seen one, but I have seen the other. So I would either start with Skeleton Crew, which I have seen, just mainly because he will get to see characters that are similar to him in age, and
yeah.
And then also he just kind of gets tidbits about the Jedi, and then you start learning, he'll start learning like, well, what do you mean the Force? I'm like, see how he floats that key in the 2nd episode, so I might start there, or I would even say Jedi Adventures. And like I said, I haven't watched that show explicitly, but the clips from it, like you were saying earlier, it's very same thing as Resistance. It's very colorful. And then also, and to go back to my last point, I feel like it's good. I want him to see characters that are closer to him in age. And also, he's such a big fan of Ben 10 right now. Like, that's his thing. Like, I got him the Ben 10 backpack school lunchbox thing combo for Christmas. He's so into that right now, where I was like, that might be what I can like. Oh, I got you. Now we're going to watch all of it, And so that
Young Jedi's great.
Yeah.
Like, my kid loves Young Jedi. It's just, it's Star Wars Paw Patrol. That's basically the best way to put it.
Yeah, and you said your Star Wars 5, Bluey. Right? Yeah, see, he's 6. I'm like, okay, you know what? You might have swung me on that one, because then I'll just watch it with him, so now I get to see what happens too. And you get to see a Yoda 100 years younger than we see him in the prequels.
Also, fun fact, if you guys have any of the store called Ollie's around you, they are loaded to the brim with Young Jedi, like, figures, and like I bought the whole freaking Jedi temple for like $20.
I have Yoda and Nubs.
Yeah, I bought like a ton of them for my kid. She's just like loves it.
Well, I pick up stuff at Ollie's all the time. I send pictures of it to Charles. Like every time I'm at Ollie's, I'm like,
I don't have one here, dude. This is BS. This is not fair.
You gotta look.
There are piles of Black Series figures out there, dude.
Yeah.
nothing good
Yeah.
there. They weren't any characters you would really care.
You
They
don't
have
know what I
Omega.
would care for.
Like they have Tech and Omega, and I needed that to complete my Black Series figures. And then I happened to stumble into a Target later that week and found the Target exclusive Omega for Bad Batch.
All right, so
It's
look,
Target exclusive.
I know Eric's about to leave, so we're going to start these rapid fire round one-wordish answers, okay? So, Brandon, we already know the order. Brandon, Eric, Aaron, me. So, first question, favorite Star Wars movie or show?
Rogue One.
Empire.
Return of the Jedi.
Attack of the Clones, and people are going to hate me for that. All right, next one. Favorite lightsaber duel?
Geonosis is dope, dude. It's cool.
Dude, it might be Natalie Portman. I don't know, dude. When I was like 7 or 8 and I saw, I'm droning, but man, that dress she had on Naboo, I was like 8 and I was like, yep, I love her. I love her. Okay, so favorite lightsaber duel?
It has to be Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan for me, too.
Rey and Ben against the Praetorian Guard.
That's a good one.
Definitely Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Maul.
That's my close second one.
That's my number 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Notable mention the deceived trailer for Old Republic.
Oh
Also great
man.
lesson.
You're talking about where it's the giant battle with all of them, right?
Where you have all the Sith versus
Yes,
all the Jedi.
dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god. That is
Also, like all the lightsaber rattles and Acolyte.
Yes.
dude,
That was a great episode, yes.
best choreography they've done since Disney
God.
acquired the IP. Okay. Next question. Underrated Star Wars character.
Jar Jar.
Mace Windu.
Rose Tico.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon Jinn. He's underrated. Bro knew everything was coming to a close and nobody believed him. This is going to tell me a lot about you guys. Empire or Republic?
Well, it's Empire Rebellion, but it's definitely the
Rebellion. Sorry. I can't read.
Sorry, I'm loyal to the Empire.
What about you, Aaron?
Rebellion.
Rebellion?
Rebellion.
Yes, same.
All the way.
Rebellion. All right. And then the last of the rapid fire questions is favorite droid.
For me, it has to be Chopper, but like honorable mention is B2 Emo.
KS-20.
Ooh.
That's a good one too.
R2D2.
BD1. I want a backpack droid. I want a droid that hangs out on my
Classic.
back
Yeah.
and
Good.
has
Love
a
BD.
map. And because I get lost a lot. And then last thing, final takeaway. And this
He just
doesn't,
pops out Tylenol.
dude. I always wondered. I'm like, how
I
do
love
these
his
healing stims
ejector.
work, dude? Where it's just like, I'm on the verge of death. Chink. Nope, I'm good now. Actually, I'm like, how much steroids is in that bottle, dude?
Have you ever watched Scarface? Right at the end when he snorts all that white powder, that's how the stims work.
I know exactly what that feels like. Then, anyway.
Yeah.
So, final takeaway in one sentence: what does Star Wars mean to you?
I don't even think I have to give a sentence. I can go with one word. I could go everything. Like Star Wars means everything to me because it's given me a community, it's given me a place to belong, and it's given me friends that hopefully I have for a lifetime.
Eric, what about you?
What about you, Eric?
I honestly, I would have to agree with him. Like everything, like it's literally a huge part of my life. I read the books, I watch TV shows, like I do all this content. Like I show my kids Star Wars. Me and my wife talk about it all the time. Like there's not many moments out there I'm not interacting with Star Wars. So yeah, I would probably agree. Everything's probably the best answer.
Aaron?
Well, now I have to be different and not say that. I'm gonna say
It means nothing. Like
You're
if they're
right,
everything,
nothing.
I'm nothing.
Nothing.
You're like,
yeah,
I
I don't even know why I'm on this podcast. No, you know what? It's that sense of wonder. It's that sense of sitting down, like in a movie theater or on the couch in front of the TV or opening one of the books and just losing yourself in that galaxy and that universe and the new characters you meet and the aliens and the droid and just that excitement and adventure and just the wonder of that galaxy far, far away is just what captivated me when I was, a child, and it still captivates me now that I'm an adult.
Definitely. I think for me, I agree with all points made, and for me, it's what Star Wars means to me is like it's that sense of adventure and finding a family and finding a place that you belong, like you see in the movies, and also I found in making friends like you guys. It's that very found where maybe the people I was raised around or knew growing up aren't on the same wavelength, but I meet people who think and feel not, and obviously we probably all have our different opinions on things,
Yeah.
but stop doing that, Brandon. God, he's having a lot of fun with the emojis. But yeah, it's in all, it is everything in that being able to, like, no matter what comes out, I can sit down and I can stop. I can sit down, and no matter what happens, you know, whether I'm watching it for the first time or the 50th time, I have that same sense of excitement and adventure, and it always brings me that same sense of joy. And with that, we're just going to make some closing remarks. First of all, Aaron and Eric, we just want to thank you guys for being on the podcast tonight. You know, we're at about an hour and a half of us just yapping, and that doesn't include us sitting in the chat room before that. But seriously, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Really quick, before we go, Aaron and then Eric, can you guys just drop your socials one more time just so we can make sure anybody who's listening can follow you guys?
Oh, yeah. If you head over to either TikTok, Threads, or Instagram and look up galactic_rep, you'll find me. And from there, and on all of those, also link tree to like YouTube and Facebook and all the other things as well. But yeah, come check out my stuff. And if it makes you laugh, you know, give me a follow. And if it doesn't, give me a follow. That'd be great.
Please. And then me, I'm for TikTok and Instagram, I'm Darth_Scathe. And like I said, Sithlish love misspelling those intimidating words. So with a K instead of a C. And then on YouTube, it's Kyberforged. So yeah,
definitely. And so with that, guys,
and I'll leave the links in the description for all this as well. So, and I'll definitely, like, in the title, I will also at your YouTube channels.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So once again, thank you guys for tuning in. If you've listened this far, you already know we are Clone Force 97. Please make sure you like, follow, comment, subscribe wherever you are listening to. We are on everything. Make sure you go follow these great fellows who are hilarious and have some great takes on Star Wars and make some amazing content. And with that, we will be saying goodnight to you guys. Happy Star Wars Podcast Day. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, which leaves you a lot of room. May the Force be with you.
Peace out, everyone.